That was great. We've been talking a lot about abundance this last month, haven't we? And so one more talk on abundance. And this one is this morning, Gifts for the Abundant Life. Now there's a book, 5 Gifts for an Abundant Life by Diane Harmony, and she gives us some guidelines, and each of the letters of the word gift is a pointer to those. And that's a great book, and I recommend it to you, but that's not what we're doing today. What we're doing today is taking a look at the gifts that we have in our lives that indicate that we're already living the abundant life. And if we would like to live a life of greater abundance, for us to look at some things that are the core of our teaching of the science of mind, and that's what we teach here at this center on Sunday mornings and in classes, is a philosophy called the science of mind, written by and founded by Dr. Ernest Holmes, and there are centers all over the world talking about this teaching, the science of mind. So let's take a look at that and see what the gifts are for us for the abundant life. And we're not limited, although we love to talk about money, we're not limiting the abundance that we have in mind to be just money, but it's also abundance in our relationships, abundance in our home, in our career, in our feeling a meaningful life and expressing ourselves in a career of our choice or through volunteer work that we love to do for us to live the most abundant life possible. Now, Jesus said some important words years ago, and you probably heard them before. I've come that ye might have life and have it more abundantly. Why did Jesus say those words? What was it that he was dealing with when he said, I've come that ye may have life and have it more abundant? There were keys in what he was saying, and for us to take a look at that. Okay, so let's build a firm foundation. I do this quite often. I seem to be wanting to build a foundation, and we've got a good solid floor to build it on here at this sanctuary. This idea that all religions of the world believe in, and that is God is all there is. God is everywhere present and all-powerful and all-knowing. Every religion talks about that. I think that we in the science of mind philosophy believe it more than anybody else. Because not only do we say that God is all there is, we take that logic and we say, well, since God is all there is, there can't be anything else. And even if it looks like there's something else out there, maybe it's just a dream we're dreaming. Maybe it's just a belief that we have, and we're so powerful as individuals making choices that are not in alignment with what we really want. And once we learn how the law of mind works, now we can make new choices to have the gifts of the abundant life. So there's a story that I'd like to share, and I think I'd like to tell it about this little booklet of Science of Mind Sunday talks that Ernest Holmes did, and it's in the little booklet called Know Yourself. And the title of that Sunday lesson was Freedom from Limitation. Now, the way he begins the talk that's in this booklet, I think he was speaking during the Depression. You know, the teaching of the science of mind became really powerful during the very deepest depression years. It started in the late 20s, went into the 30s and 40s and 50s, and it was in those 30 years that I think Ernest Holmes said these words. We do not question the fact that the belief in lack and limitation has produced a similar objective condition. Nor do we deny that people are experiencing a condition of poverty which is not in harmony with happiness or wholeness. What we affirm, however, is that without consciousness, there could be no experience, and that if we are successful in changing the consciousness, we shall at the same time be successful in changing the experience. That really is at the core of our teaching of the science of mind. Change your thinking, keep your thinking changed, and your life will change, right? And we're going to have some new little cards put out. There's going to be something we can hand out to people pretty soon that say something very similar to that on them. This idea, if lack and limitation is not real, if it's just a dream that the world is suffering from, how many of you have had a nightmare and it really seemed real? Yeah, I woke up from one of those the other morning, and boy, was I glad it was only a dream when I woke up. And sometimes you can get dreams in your lives that you don't even know why you dreamed them. I'd like to tell a story about a dream that was very touching to me. It's in the latest issue of Guidepost magazine. I walked through a cemetery late at night. Even by the light of the full moon, the names on the tombstones remained shrouded in darkness. Then lightning zigzagged through the sky and illumined the headstone before me, Wes Smith. My heart stopped. I knew that name. I awoke with a start. It was only a dream, thank goodness. Still, I was unsettled. Why had I dreamed of Wes? Sure, we'd liked each other as sixth graders. We'd met in the fall of '72 and clicked right away. He was so handsome with his soft brown eyes and sweet smile. But then he moved away. I hadn't really thought about him in the 4 years since. It was just a strange dream, I told myself. It doesn't mean anything. But over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to tell Wes what I had dreamed about. I tracked down his address and wrote him a letter about the dream, but I didn't hear back. Eventually, Wes, the dream, and the letter slipped from my mind. One day, 4 years later, I dropped by the college dorm suite next door to borrow a book. "Hang on," my neighbor said, "I'll grab it from my backpack." While I was waiting, I glanced around and noticed her high school prom photos. I looked closer. Her prom date. Those soft brown eyes, that sweet smile. He was bigger and taller, but I recognized him instantly. Wes. My neighbor came back with the book. I told her how I knew Wes and was that I'd love to catch up with him. She put us in touch. As it turned out, he remembered me too. He was coming to town and wanted to meet. On a Friday night, Wes and I found ourselves at a college hangout, catching up over chicken wings. We filled in each other on the past 8 years. Then Wes's tone turned serious. "Donna," he said, "I want to thank you for sending me that letter." Wes explained that he'd gotten into drugs as a teen, but then he got my letter. It scared him into seeing that the way he was living might make my dream a reality. That letter you sent was the turning point. After I got it, I stopped doing drugs. It's been almost 40 years since that day. I never saw or heard from Wes again, but I'll never forget how we reconnected and the strange dream that turned out to be so much more. So dreams can be powerful, and it also points to our oneness as a human race, doesn't it? That Donna, that wrote this story, and Wes had some kind of a connection, and she probably saved his life by letting him know of the dream. But getting back to this idea that our experience of life, especially if we're not experiencing life at the highest and best level, it might be helpful to think it's only a dream and then do something about it. And what is it that we can do if the dream that we're living isn't the dream we want to be living? The first thing that Ernest Holmes, our founder, suggests that we do is to really believe these ideas in the all-powerful nature of the divine. That God is everywhere present, all-powerful and all-knowing. And for us to know that that also means all good. That wonderful idea of the kingdom of heaven, right? Being right here on earth and being right here within us, that's the truth. And if we're experiencing anything other than that in our lives, that those things that we're experiencing aren't facts that need to remain in our lives. They simply are giving us an indication of where our thinking is taking us. And then to realize that the only lack that we really have isn't in those outer things. Our lack is in our understanding of God. That's where we're lacking. If we're not experiencing the full, rich life that we want to be experiencing, the lack is in our misunderstanding of the way God works in our lives and how we can bring that into our lives to get the higher good. Okay, so let's say that a person that we love is experiencing that less than in their life. Let's say we're that person, and all of us have some area of our life where we could improve, right? Is there anyone here that doesn't have anything to improve? We all have things that we can improve. We can all have our careers be more fully expressed. We can all picture that this congregation is full even after the kids go off to junior church on a Sunday morning. We can picture all kinds of things that are great and good. Fill the balcony on Sundays. That's my dream, and I'm holding that to it, and I think that's what God wants to give us. So this wonderful idea that if the lack is in our understanding of the divine, that we make that shift. That we really come to understand that God is all wholeness, that God is all abundance, that God is all peace, all joy, all power, that life is wonderful, and for us to claim that for ourselves. You know, one of the real understandings as we come to understand is that God loves to give. That's what God is all about, is about givingness. God isn't about taking. We're the ones that need to learn to receive. We can give God the glory and also know that God doesn't even need us to do that, right? Because of the infinite nature of the divine. But for us to open to the place where we recognize who we are in our relationship with the divine. The gift of the abundant life is for us to really own that we are the offspring of the divine, made in the image and likeness of God, that our thoughts are creative, and we may be presently creating a lot of lack in our life, but we've got an abundance of it, right? Or we can have less than the health that we would like to experience, or less than the relationship or the home or whatever it is that's reaching to us and calling us, that may very well be God reaching to us and saying, this is yours if you only claim it. For us to be in that place and pick something small that's fun to play with and then let it grow into the big things in our lives. And to say, okay, I'm going to accept the gifts of abundance in my life because I know the infinite is attempting to pour them upon me. Years ago, Emerson said, if you want to understand God, probably the place to look is not at the human race, but at nature. And he was probably right, wasn't he? That's not a direct quote. But if we take a look at the way the world is, we're not really seeing the way God works in the way that we can see it in nature. We certainly see no lack in nature, do we? In the cosmos, there's this abundance. Ernest Holmes says there's never been a cosmic famine. This wondrous idea that the infinite is just that. And the infinite is forever pouring that infinite upon us. And for us to get rid of our lack of understanding of God and really get into understanding our relationship with an infinite source. Do whatever it takes. Read Ernest Holmes' writings. Read the textbook. Many of you have read the textbook. Read it again. For us to find those things. Come to class. The Foundations class is ending soon, right? A couple weeks. This week or next week? The 5th, okay? But there will be another class coming in after the new year. Take classes. I invite us all to let go of our lack of understanding of God. And as we do, we will be embracing the gifts of abundance. That's where the key lies. And the outer things will fall into place. Let's do our affirmation together, shall we? The one on the inside that Al led you with, right under the greeting. Spirit's abundance surrounds me all the time. I know that all creation is the manifestation of God's mind, and that I am a child of God, ready to receive and dispense the good. And so it is. You know, each of us this morning could come up with an idea of something where things fell into place perfectly for you. All of you are experiencing that in some area of your life. And I just invite us all this morning to say, okay, in that area of my life, I understand how God works. and giving the gifts of Spirit, for us to see that every good thing that comes into our lives comes from that one source. Give God the credit for that. Give Spirit the credit for that. That's where it came from. And all the channels into our life are created also by the divine. And the divine is not limited as to the number of channels of good that can come into our lives. For us to know that as we expect the unexpected, and we live the life of knowing who God is in our lives are blessed, and abundance is ours. And so it is. Let's turn within for a moment, shall we? Recognizing the allness of the divine, I give thanks for this knowingness that the only thing that any of us ever lacks is an understanding of the divine, and that we can solve that problem by study and prayer. We can pray on Christmas and other times and invite that wisdom of the infinite to flow into our lives in such a way that we allow the givingness of the infinite to infinitely bless us. No longer pushing it away from ourselves, no longer saying that we're not worthy, but opening to the worthiness of ourselves as being children of the Most High, God in expression. I give thanks that this is so, and so it is.